Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Lowdown on Low Code. We are up to episode 7. You might notice that I am not joined by my usual co-host, Ryan Dugan. Ryan is high up in the air somewhere. And we're delighted to have John Reimer back co-hosting with us today. John was the guest on our very first episode. John, if we remember, was the inventor. He coined the term low code, and and some very interesting interactions with our guest today on that particular topic. I want to bring everybody's attention back to a couple episodes ago. Episode 5, we had Merv Adrian. And Merv and I discussed Forrester Waves and Gartner MQs. We discussed evaluative research and how you should be using evaluative research in your decision to bring low code and digital process automation into your organizations. And hopefully the conclusion that became very clear is there's a lot of very good products in the market, and those products are very well tuned for their customers, for their strategy. And so all products are not all things to all people, and this is a particularly nuanced area of the market. So with that in mind, we really want to bring on vendors. This is our first episode where we actually bring a vendor on and let the vendors actually explain to us where they fit in the market and where their strategy is best applied. So with that, I want to turn it over to today's co-host, John Reimer.
Thanks, Rob. Hey, Malcolm. Great to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
For those who don't, Malcolm, Rob, and I go back a long, long time. For those who don't know, Malcolm is the Senior Vice President of Product Strategy for Appian. And as Rob mentioned, way back when Clay Richardson and I coined the term low code, Appian was in the process business, but the term low code wasn't current. And it was emerging. But in 2017, by the time 2017 rolled around and Appian was ready to go public, Appian was actually the first company to go public and identify itself as a low-code vendor, and has just run with it from there. So very very timely and pertinent that you're our first guest, Malcolm. Maybe you could tell folks a little bit more about your background. You've been at this a long time, and you've seen a lot of the changes over the years.
Yeah, I guess listening to some of your podcasts, Rob, I'm actually a Lotus Notes specialist certification back in the 90s. I started my career when I was really doing like paid software development when I was about 15 years old, doing Excel and spreadsheet development for a landscaping company. Then I worked for Crossland Mortgage Corporation down in Florida when I was 16, 17 years old. They originally hired me to do data entry into a VAX mainframe system on mortgage applications. And then I ended up, by the end of that time there, I was developing a FoxPro database that replaced that VAX mainframe back in 1992, we'll say. So started very young, been at it for something like over 30 years now in just kind of software development. Got my degree in computer science and information science from Florida State. And since then, really kind of been really just focused on software companies, solving hard solutions for our customers. Been with Appian for just over 19 and a half years. Met Clay Richardson. He and I worked together back at the HandySoft days in business process management back in the early 2000s. So a Korean company that was early on the workflow space as well. But today, it's long career and always a pleasure kind of connecting with you and Rob as well to kind of talk about the history and where we are today as well.
Hey, John, I just have to break in. I know you've got some stuff you want to say, but I just have to break in. So we call sort of, how did you find your way to this? We call this the Trask moment. Like, we really want to just a call back to the movie Working Girl. Great freaking Trask moment. It's like, holy mackerel. How did I not know all that stuff about you, including the Lotus Notes stuff? We have to spend a lot more time talking about that. So anyway, back to our regularly scheduled programming here.
I was what you describe a very hardcore computer nerd in the 80s and 90s when I was in high school and even middle school. And, on Friday nights, instead of going out, I was downloading Quattro Pro and figuring out how to use Quattro Pro and like on my IBM PS1 computer.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Wow. So Malcolm, we coined the term low code in 2012, 2013.
Mhm.
There's been a lot of great development, as Rob mentioned, a lot of great product out there that helps people build software applications, keep them up to date, keep going, digitizing their businesses. Sort of the thesis that Rob and I have been working on is we've encountered a number of folks, which we think are pretty representative, that start on a low code journey. They start to introduce the technology. And of course, they have other older technologies in-house
Mhm.
as well. And they get some initial success, and then they kind of get stuck. I mean, the vision of low code is that everybody's involved in software. Software is completely aligned with the business as it evolves. What's your sense of where we are as an industry in this low code journey that we're on?
Yeah, I've been saying for a few years that low code as a market doesn't really exist. Low code is a product management design philosophy that can be applied to any number of software applications. You can see video game software being advertised as no code, low code, enterprise software, of course, like Appian being provide low code, no code. So low code is, in my opinion, very similar to the modus of cloud, where when we went through the cloud revolution in the late 2000s, it was just all about how do I make software more easily accessible to customers to utilize by skipping complex installations and upgrades and just providing it as a service. And that just took off because it made business sense. Customers loved it. They can just sign up and start using it. They didn't have to do very costly upfront procurements, and then they could just start using the software right away. Same thing with low code, except instead of cloud really be focusing, apply that to SaaS as packaged software initially, Salesforce and other vendors. Low code is the same modus of like, how can I create design experiences that how I build software as easily accessible as possible. Now, cloud is the primary delivery mechanism for low code today, but that's not really the defining attribute of low code. It's really looking at the entire software development lifecycle, what it takes to get to the goal a customer wants, breaking it down and saying, how can I make that easier? How can I accelerate that and how allow the customer to get value as quickly as possible? And again, low code, it's a very misnomer to put QuickBase and Appian and all these other vendors into a specific market, because we rarely compete against each other because we're achieving different outcomes at the end. But we all employ low code as a design philosophy of how we make that outcome more rapidly achievable.
So that's a great segue, Malcolm.
Find...
I want to actually now kind of move into this concept. John, did I miss something?
No, go ahead, Rob.
Okay. You had a look on your face like we had a question teed up and I didn't get to it. Very organic. So I want to segue into that what I mentioned at the beginning, the evaluative research. And you're right. I mean, you're not in deals against QuickBase, you're not in deals against Smartsheet. You are tuned for some very specific instances, and kind of describe the landscape. I'm an Appian account executive, and I've just walked into a pretty sizable opportunity. And let's say the prospect doesn't really understand all the nuances of low code. What is it that account executive is going to hear that's going to make them think, oh, this is my deal. This is exactly what Appian's built to do. What are the characteristics of the perfect prospect for Appian?
It really centers on what we would call end-to-end process orchestration or automation. So we are not well suited for small departmental applications, small teams, things like this. We very much prefer the application where you have complex data integration challenges, complex process automation challenges that need to lean into maybe a variety of automation technologies like API integrations, robotic process automation, AI, business rules. as well as complex departmental coordination. That it's about trying to get marketing to work well with sales, to work with product launch, and to look at that end-to-end process and to achieve better outcomes from it. So that's the thing that gets us excited, is seeing those IT leaders or the business leaders who are responsible for seeing the forest for the trees, and to look beyond the tactical, but look at the holistic outcomes that they're trying to build solutions for.
Can you give us some examples, Malcolm? Some of the real lighthouse examples that have demonstrated people have demonstrated Appian's value.
Sure, I'll use that as an opportunity to do a shameless plug of Appian World coming up on April 15th to 17th. But maybe to just call out some of the customers I know we're going to have represented there on stage. One of the key customers we're going to have first is Axiom Space. So Axiom Space is responsible for the supporting NASA in the Artemis lunar mission, specifically for the design and engineering of the new lunar EVA spacesuit for the lunar surface, as well as operational management of the International Space Station and build out of the next generation space station as well. So their challenge, of course, is complex coordination. NASA has a goal that they announced several years ago of commercializing near-Earth space exploration. So lunar to Earth is going to be commercial. Lunar beyond is deep space exploration is going to be the purview of NASA. And they want to work with commercial agencies like Axiom and SpaceX and Collins and Raytheon and all these companies to really encourage that industry. And Axiom is at the forefront of that. And one of those, of course, is the Artemis missions going in a few areas, and they need to build out these custom spacesuits for the next generation lunar surface landing with complex coordination of supply chain vendors who are supplying material with NASA to ensure that it meets the criteria for lunar exploration, and with also their own engineering resources to say, well, we need to manufacture this ourselves. So that's a great example where it's a big mission, it's complex coordination, it's mission critical to the operations of their business. And we'll have some great head of design engineering. Axiom's going to be keynoting that for us. Another, maybe to call it another example, the other keynote customer we have is United States Army in the ASL group, which is the Army Supply and Logistics. We'll have the Jennifer Swanson, the Assistant Deputy Secretary for the United States Army for ASL, talking about, again, very complex stuff. How do I get material in the hands of warfighters in the field as efficiently and elegantly as possible? So contracting, procurement processes, very important to the mission of the United States Army. So great examples, again, where we center on these very large, encompassing mission supporting operations.
So I'm going to go off script again, just because I keep getting excited about what I'm hearing. And so on Tuesday of this week, this past Tuesday, there's this open speaker series. They bring in all these really cool speakers, and our last speaker was Kobe Boykins, who's the one of the chief engineers at NASA, works at Jet Propulsion Lab. So I think that was a very cool example and very timely. Malcolm, earlier you mentioned sort of what I might refer to as sort of the sophisticated nature of an application. It requires a lot of different pieces to piece together the solution, the orchestration, data integration, obviously application development, rules decisioning, RPA steps being taken in the process, content intelligence. One of the pieces that has been emerging over the last, we were working on this 5-6 years ago. We started talking about it. Is the idea of understanding your processes, process mining, process intelligence coming in as a front end capability to give you insight into where you can drive process optimization. And obviously, you guys bought Lana Labs to plug that into your comprehensive offering. How has that changed how people are using and applying Appian, and where are we in that journey?
Well, for people like yourself and John who've been familiar with the BPM industry for a long time, we're still chasing that dream of round trip process engineering. We'll say that was the original vision of business process management, right? So that you design, you automate and manage, then you optimize, and you have this virtuous cycle of continuous process improvement. And that's still a valid dream. It's just how we did that in BPM was very siloed in the concept where you can analyze what you automated, right, or what you manage in the process engine, but it was very poor in looking at the more holistic operations of the organization. So that's why process mining is so important as far as to really fulfill that virtuous cycle is to, yes, you can build inside the Appian product with low code, you can automate things. When it comes to optimization, though, you can't just look inside your own siloed app. You need to look in SAP and Workday and what people actually do on computers all day and all the timesheets going on and everywhere to understand holistically how you can actually improve operations. So that's where we're taking kind of that optimization vision. This is also a preview of my Appian World keynote. Design, automate, optimize will be the theme of that keynote. And the optimization is a supportive of looking holistically at business operations and then leading back into agile and low code design to support rapid iteration and improvement over time, if that makes sense.
It does. How far along are we in this journey? I had this, when I retired, I don't know, 14, 15 months ago, I had this vision that we're just constantly getting signals from our process mining. We're constantly improving, and the other piece I think that maybe I was a little far out of the headlights or just smoking the curtains on was that we would have more and more of our business users become familiar with process mining and how to use it in process optimization. How far along are we on that journey? And was I smoking the curtains, around this, business process optimizer role?
Well, I mean, we could expand that even broader to talk about the low-code developer or the citizen developer that does or does not exist possibly. But to talk about process mining specifically, there's big challenges in process mining across the entire market that have yet to be solved, specifically with the data understanding, data cleansing, to get it in a way that confident decisions can be made off of. So that's a large part of what we're working on behind the scenes. And if you've heard of the term data fabric with Appian lately, that's a centerpiece of what we see as an important element for proper data alignment and cleansing to make confident decisions off of. So we'll be again announcing a lot of this stuff in our upcoming releases very soon as far as how we're integrating that data fabric across HQ. But not to say we solved that though, because it's still a very specialized role, right? So when we talk about, the citizen developer is going to do this in their casual free time, it's like the reality is they have a day job. They don't have free time to go, spend 3 hours analyzing process. So there's still very much a dedicated role of an analyst who is using these tools to gain insights from it. So I wouldn't say that we're gonna the front desk person and the everyday citizen developer is going to actively be participating in this. That said, you'll see from us this year kind of make headway towards that as far as at least giving access to the tools. I could dive into this deeper, but you have a question maybe before I do?
No, I was going to jump in and ask you about I was going to jump in and ask you about the roles that, you raised the topic of roles. People aren't going to just take on this responsibility in their spare time. They have a day job.
Yeah.
Are you seeing organizations evolving their staffing to really explicitly recognize and reward these roles? These new roles?
Maybe let's break this down further to say, why is it that only certain people in an organization have this analyst role to do business intelligence work? And maybe take process mining out, but process mining is essentially just an aspect of BI, right? It's a way of looking at data in a specific lens. It's business intelligence in the traditional sense. So why is it that only certain people in an organization typically have a license to Tableau or Power BI? It's a number of reasons. It's the nature of how Microsoft or Salesforce license it, right? So it's not necessarily cheap software. You got to pay for that person to have access to this very powerful software to gain business intelligence. Mm-hmm. Second, that person has to be trusted with data, because when I move data out of their data sources of truth and into a data warehouse, I often drop security. So the security that was in place in Salesforce, where I can't see those opportunities, suddenly now I can see them in a data warehouse. So that needs to be a trusted role that person has comprehensive view. And working for a publicly traded company, it's like with those people in roles at Appian, oh, you got to get, if you want to trade stock, you got to go get sign off by your GC. You got to do all sorts of additional checks and balances to ensure that person is trusted. So, and then outside of that, of course, the tools themselves are very specialized, right? So it's not, you don't just walk up to Tableau and start using it. You got to understand relational database and star schemas and data warehouse, and you got to understand how to massage data and get it into the right shape that you want to drive insight. So it's a specialized role. Breaking all those down, that's why the role is separate right now, is because there's all these barriers of access to that specific tool set, aside from just the time, right, it takes to use it. Now, you could say where we are today, artificial intelligence is very promising as far as to do more automated data insights and cause correlation and probabilistic outcome predicting and things like this. So AI can apply that, but you still have those other barriers of security, and confident access and trusted source of data, as well as the access to the tools itself as well. So, we're looking at this again holistically. When we look at that problem, the things what Appian's trying to do is first invest in that data fabric, again, from our perspective, which is one of our most important features, is what we call row-level security, which allows us to create a consolidated virtualized database, which still enforces the security permissions that people have. So that at least allows you to give data to individuals without knowing that they're going to see, data they're not authorized to see. The second is access to tools. How we're going to be offering Process HQ and self-service analytics is basically the customer can decide who gets it, right? So there's no individual license. Oh, you pay for, John Doe and Jane Smith to gain access to it. You can decide who accesses it and then have ubiquitous access in the company. And then overlaying the AI some to basically guide the person to get insights faster, so it doesn't take 5 hours to build an interesting insight into the environment. So this stuff is evolving over time. You'll see a lot of stuff from Appian, I'd say, this year around that.
Thank you.
There's, obviously, there's a lot of focus on AI from a lot of different perspectives. I think, John and I, is it fair to say that we have some level of concern about some of the misinformation going on around AI in the low-code space?
Yeah.
I think we are particularly concerned, and we'll dive into the topic of, these, I think, are fairly, these fairly misinformed voices that are saying there isn't going to be low code. You're just going to tell the computer what you want and it will build it. And we think that's problematic in the sense that it's wrong, but also problematic in the sense that it might cause people to think that it's true. But anyway, I want to get a sense of what is Appian's thoughts on AI. Obviously, there is a lot you can apply very, very quickly, and then maybe a longer term strategic vision. So what is your sort of near-term sort of roadmappy kind of stuff around AI? And then maybe we can kind of wrap up with what does the future look like with, an Appian AI enabled shop 10 years from now?
Yeah, it's interesting. There is a lot of kind of lofty, expectations, but when I see the work that my team's doing, we're doing inside, it's like it's not too far off of what might be possible in the next 3 to 5 years. So I guess first thing, if I were to, telling competitors or other software companies, the way to view AI is the way that you should be viewing low code, is that it is not a feature. It is a philosophy that basically says, I'm going to utilize this new transformative technology to accelerate the delivery of outcomes to my customer. Right. So, and when we look at AI, we look at it not as a single thing, but as a ubiquitous aspect of the entire platform that accelerates outcomes, if that makes sense. So when we look at AI specifically, we've made investments already into what we call the AI skill designer, which is kind of like the low-hanging fruit, is how do I make it easier for non-technical people to build new AI skills and leverage those in the processes? So that's a very easy low-hanging fruit. We've been very focused on document processing recently as a primary use case for our customers. and then expanding that. We just added a generative AI prompt designer in our tool in the last release. This just came out a couple of weeks ago. So you'll see that expanding. The other attribute of AI is gaining insights from data more quickly as well. So we just talked about that in the context of process mining. That's another kind of different aspect of AI, but it's a very useful aspect to help people sift through large amounts of data, find causation and correlation more quickly, and create insights more quickly. Another attribute of AI is also the breaking down how well, maybe I'll cover the low code first. If you think about low code at its core, it's all about trying to make it more, communicative of how a person interacts with a computer to instruct it what to do. We've been focused on low code very much through visual concepts, right? So BPMN, DMN, things like this. But these new innovations around natural language allow for a much more fluid, conversation, because even with BPMN, for example, teach a human what is a circle, what is a square, what is a diamond, and now we have a common lexicon that we can share with a computer so that we can communicate the same language, so I can communicate my intent more clearly. With a generative AI, you can now use natural language, which is much better at translating natural language into intent, which then allows me to more quickly achieve the outcome the customer wants through a more natural expression from the human. That said, though, we still see a point of low code where we expect, like any AI, the outcome of the AI is going to be probabilistic, which means that it's going to guess at what the intent was. And then in order to get it to the exact, you have to have some type of direct control, right? So, I need to be able to modify the process, modify the report, modify the interface. So there's still some dragging and dropping inside of there, but it's going to accelerate achievement of the outcome by having the AI try to predict what the user wants. And then the last area that you kind of exploring is AI for end user interaction, which I firmly believe we will see a breakdown of the concept of an application. So if an application itself, if you look at it, is prescriptively designed by a developer, right? So they're going to try to guess at what the best experience is for a user. They're going to take time in Swift or Java or whatever to build that experience, then hope it meets the need for the user. And there's a lot of probabilistic, guessing from the developer in that development process. Well, a lot of that could be driven by AI, where if the end user simply says, hey, I need a dashboard that shows me customer onboarding performance compared to by region over the past 30 days, and please make this uptime real time, they can express it in natural language and then have the AI take a guess at what the dashboard should be and then build it on the fly. Well, and then if the user likes it, they can pin it, save as an app, and maybe that becomes an application now for their specific use. But that concept of app building, it's broken down really quick, cutting out the developer, using the AI, and then the AI more becomes on-the-fly generation of whatever thing I need right now, it generates. And if it's useful, the user can save it. If it was just a one-time thing, they can throw it away and then, never look at it again. So I would say we're like those concepts, we're within a year of delivering those concepts. So it's going to really change the way that, I think people interact with computers in that sense. Yeah.
Malcolm, in the same way that AI can generate a good guess at a process, and then a developer can go in and really finish it, really make sure that it's right and manageable and all that. Do you anticipate that end users who would say, give me a dashboard, would also go in and do some tuning and basically do some modification to create a finished product?
A dashboard is the lower hanging fruit, because if you think about in the corporate operations, a process encodes policies and procedures for the corporation, right? So there should not be any variability or guessing around that. I need to respond to a mortgage loan application within 3 days, and that's U.S. federal law, period, right? But a dashboard is simply a view into data. So there's much less risk there as far as the AI getting something wrong or guessing what it is. So I think we'll see that first as far as AI generating views in the data very easily. And kind of, again, if I find it useful, I can save it. If I don't find it useful, I can delete it and say, ignore what the AI generated for me, or I could load it into a low code tool and then kind of tweak it in that sense. But, when it comes to policy enforcement, business rules, confidence of data, things like this, it will be more of a low code augmented developer experience.
Right. Very great.
So
Thank you.
I'm 15 years into working with John Reimer, and I can totally see the moment when he's writing research in his head.
It's back in the saddle.
I know there's a follow-up conversation coming on after this. Malcolm, thank you so much for taking the time today. It was really helpful and really insightful. We really appreciate it. I will echo Malcolm's pitch for Appian World coming up here in April 15th to 17th. Is that pretty good?
That's
pretty
right.
good
Yeah, here in the Washington, D.C. area for us. So
in
local for
Washington,
me.
D.C. So well worth your time and effort if you can make it out there. Thank you, John. Thank you, Malcolm, and thank you for all the guests for taking the time to listen today.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.